That was tonight's meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals is now called to order. We'll start by pledging allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we get started, a couple of quick announcements. My name is Gary Bailey. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I will be conducting tonight's meeting. Our chairman, Mr. Jim Bittinger, has submitted a resignation, and we are waiting to get board acceptance on that. Just a little bit about Jim. First of all, he went to Notre Dame. He was quite proud of that. I know from personal experience. He was appointed to the ZBA in 2001. He was elected chairman in 2012. A long time. Jim was calm, civil, polite, and very patient with members of the audience and some members of the board who, like myself, would tend to talk too much and be repetitive. Jim will be missed by myself and I think all members of this board. We wish him well, we wish him good health, and hope he's happy in whatever he continues to do. Thank you, Jim, for your service. We'd like to make a modification to tonight's agenda. According to the township manager, Jim's resignation has not been accepted at this point in time by the Board of Supervisors. Therefore, if it's okay with the board, we will delay the election of officers until the Board of Supervisors accepts Jim's resignation, and he will no longer officially be a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
So moved.
James, if you can take that back to the board,
Yes, sir.
I would appreciate it. That being said, tonight's appeal is by Mr. Jeremy Shiraki. Am I saying that right? Correct me if I'm wrong. We'll go through our usual procedure. We'll have our consultant, Brian Borden, give his presentation. Then we'll ask Mr. Shiraki to come up and give his. One other addition at the end of the presentation, everybody will have a chance to hopefully have looked at the meeting minutes, and we will approve those at that time. Any questions? If not, Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nice words about Jim, too. We all appreciate all the time he put into this board, and quite a few years. He's been around ZBA actually longer than I've been around your ZBA, which is a really long time. So anyway, thank you for doing that. All right, case before you tonight is for 8961 Macomb Street, better known as Lloyd's. I'm sure you're all somewhat familiar, if not very familiar, with the property. We're on the south side of Macomb, east of Meridian, immediately adjacent to the east side of the Kroger parking lot. Site and surrounding properties are all zoned MSD Macomb Street District. And the request before you specifically, there's actually quite a few variances tonight. So we have 5 variances in total. We have an expansion of a non-conforming building. We have an encroachment into the required front yard setback. We have 2 encroachments into the same required side yard setback. And we have an increase in an impervious surface ratio that is already non-conforming. So those, and I'll enumerate those a little bit better, but those are the 5 we're dealing with. It is important to know, so this is a sort of a multi-board project because of the expansion, because it's a non-residential building expansion with site improvements. The project did also require site plan review and approval. That was presented to the Planning Commission last evening, and the Commission did grant conditional approval of the site plan. One of the conditions obviously was ZBA approval of the variances. So the site plan is still contingent upon your decisions tonight, and depending on what your decision may be, that will help determine the next steps in the project. If it's approved, then the applicant moves into engineering review and ultimately permits. If it's partially approved, then modifications may be needed to the site plan, which may also then necessitate re-review by Planning Commission. So that's where we're at tonight, but at least we got through that step, and now we're before you for the variance request. So on the screen is the overall site plan. So the bottom of the screen is the full site layout. This is the existing building, this large rectangle in the gray stripes here. I mentioned that there are a couple of variances tied to this. So this building is essentially at a 0 lot line on the west side setback, so it is non-conforming. This portion of Macomb Street requires a 10-foot side yard setback. So the first thing we're dealing with is the expansion of a non-conforming building. There is a 3-pronged test that can be met in order to have a permissible expansion of a non-conforming building. That test is not met in this particular instance. So that's variance 1. If you look to, actually I'm going to switch pictures on you. I'm going to go to the upper left. So again, existing building. If we look at this darker gray box, this is 2 of the 5 variances. So this addition, this is kind of a sort of a I don't know, I call it a couple different things last night, but it's kind of a seasonal covered seating. It is covered, it is enclosed, but when I show you the elevations, you'll note that they are relatively large kind of roll-up windows that creates a nice kind of open air atmosphere, but it is a fixed building, so it is subject to setback requirements. It does encroach into the front yard, and it also encroaches into the side yard. So this particular addition accounts for 2 of the variances. And then if you look to the rear of the building, bigger picture down here, zoom in picture up here, this is a sort of a cooler / storage building addition that has already been constructed. So any of you that visited the site would have noticed that this already exists. They built this at some point in the last year. They did so prior to obtaining the necessary approvals to do so. Part of that was reconciled last night with site plan review. The bigger part of that is in front of you for tonight. And that is tied to the fact that it is slightly deficient in its side yard setback as well. So I mentioned that it's side yard setback twice. So it's this front building addition encroaches into the side. The rear building addition also encroaches into the side. And then the 5th variance is tied to the amount of impervious surface on the site. The site is, other than really a landscape island, a very small portion of sort of grassy area at the far rear of the site, and what is, or what used to be, those of you that were familiar with Lloyd's, they used to put up a tent in the summer or seasonal months. I think actually the aerial shows it. And I think that area is quasi grass. It's not impervious. I think it's grass. It's not in great shape, but anyway. So what we're dealing with is a situation whereby constructing this addition to the front as well as the patio, they are actually moving even a little bit beyond their already non-conforming impervious surface ratio. So Macomb Street allows 80% impervious. Per the architect's calcs, they're currently at about 86. This project will bump them up to about 91%. So again, another increase that would necessitate a variance. So those are the 5 variances that we're dealing with. Next slide is a view of the elevations. So upper right would be the view from Macomb Street. You can see this is the sort of, again, covered, enclosed, but large roll-up window area. And then this is the fence railing around the outdoor patio, uncovered, unenclosed. And then this is the view from the Kroger side. So again, existing building in the plain gray, proposed front addition here, and then here's the patio addition there. And then the flip side, we've got the same thing, existing building, proposed addition here, and then the wraparound patio on this side with an ingress-egress door from the building onto the patio located on this side, which is where the drive aisle is for the property. There are a couple other things that I'll just point out. They are adding some landscaping. The site is really deficient currently in landscaping, so they are at least making an attempt to dress up the front a little bit. Though they will not have the front yard green belt, there are some shrub plantings, there are a few tree plantings, and this buffer will be maintained with sort of grass or ground cover, both between the patio and sidewalk, as well along the sides, both the side of the property line and then the internal side. And then this area is actually dedicated for bicycle parking. So these are actually bike racks that are proposed in here, which, while not required by ordinance, at least from the Planning Commission's perspective, I think they viewed those pretty favorably. It's a nice accommodation for non-motorized transportation. We really want to, make Macomb Street more walkable friendly, more pedestrian friendly, and friendlier for bicyclists and not just for cars. So I think that was a nice touch as well. So getting into the specifics, I've already touched on most of these in general, but I'll give you the actual details. So again, 18.6A is the section where the first variance it comes from. That's tied to allowable expansions of non-conforming buildings. I mentioned the three-pronged test. That test is not met. Therefore, that's variance number one. The front yard setback, that addition has a setback of 14 feet. A minimum of 25 feet is required by section 7.4. The front addition, in terms of its side setback, they have a 6-foot setback. Section 7.4 requires a 10-foot setback. Similarly, at the rear with the cooler storage building addition, they have a 7.2 foot setback. 7.4, I'm giving you too many numbers, I apologize. 7.2 foot setback. Section 7.4 requires a 10-foot setback. And then lastly, again, is the overall impervious surface ratio for the site, currently estimated at about 86%, proposed at about 91%, ordinance limitation per section 7.4 of 80%. The slide, or not the slide, but the box on the left side of the screen, these are your variance review criteria. So any decision that you are to make tonight, short of tabling or postponing, either favorable with conditions, or rejection of the request, should be based upon the review standards in section 23.5B of the Township Zoning Ordinance. All that being said, I will provide sort of a quick overview of my review letter. You should all have a copy of this. It's dated July 23rd of this year, was issued last week. So the first one is simply a point I've already mentioned. Planning Commission did grant conditional site plan approval at their meeting last night. So ZBA approval obviously was one of those conditions. Final engineering approval was another. Final fire marshal approval was another. And then lastly, the Planning Commission also required a screen fence be placed on the, essentially as an enclosure for there's some mechanical equipment in this area. If you all can see my cursor on the screen, upper left, there's some mechanical equipment and a couple of storage bins. They will be screening that with a wood fence material that is similar and intended to match or mimic the screen fence that's on the other side of the property between the parking lot and the garden center property. So there is a screen fence there. This will be enclosed with that same type of screen fencing. And that's actually an ordinance requirement. So anytime we have mechanical equipment, it is allowed in a side yard, it is allowed in a required side yard, but it does have to be screened. So that was one of the commission's conditions tied to their approval last night. So as I've mentioned, the three-pronged test for a non-conforming expansion is not met. So nothing can be done to this building without at least one variance, and that would be to expand a non-conforming building. So if all of the additions, or if the additions met current ordinance standards, then that would be the one variance that you would be looking at. In this case, they obviously are not meeting those setbacks, which is why they're here for more variances. So I did put in sort of, at least in my opinion, I do think that the addition to the rear was constructed while it does encroach by 2.8 feet into the side setback. It is, if you look here, and again, any of you that have been there would remember this as the older primary access point, or one of the primary access points, but the addition was built as far from the property line as it could be without impeding ingress egress to the building. So this is a functional doorway, and it will remain such. So the addition was pulled down as far as it could go, at least in terms of not disrupting the interior of the building. In that case, I do feel that for some amount of the request, that strict compliance could be viewed as unnecessarily burdensome per your practical difficulty test. That being said, I would put it upon the applicant to explain to the board how they believe the other three variances also are unnecessarily burdensome in relation to that practical difficulty criterion. So I will look to them when they get up to present you with a little bit of additional information that I think it's needed in this case to justify those three variances. Similarly, I do think that as it relates to the substantial justice test, I would like the applicant to inform the board of any alternatives that were discussed, thought of, drafted, designed, but not pursued, and why they were not pursued in terms of alternative designs that would have either reduced the number of variances sought or would have reduced the extent of the variances sought. And again, I'll particularly note my concern being tied to mostly the front yard addition as well as the increase in impervious surface. As far as, again, some of the request, I think you can certainly make the case that it's tied to existing site conditions. We've got a building that is at a zero lot line. We've got a parking lot that is almost at a zero lot line on both sides. Portions of the east are at zero. Portions of the west are from 6 inches to 2 feet of side setbacks. So there's already some issues here. The impervious surface, to a degree, at 86% is already above what it should have been. So there are certainly some existing site conditions that are limiting factors with respect to this particular project. But again, I do think that the applicant, it would behoove them to provide you with some additional information in terms of why they believe that the property has an unusual or extraordinary circumstance to help justify that particular standard of the ordinance. And then the next point is really just something I wanted to put out there as it's more of just a dialogue point, not even a discussion point, but I did think it was important to note that the way your ordinance is drafted, there are provisions for setback flexibility on Macomb Street, just not at this location. So if you go geographically, and I'm not going to have a good slide for that, when you go east of Park Lane, the ordinance provides a ton of discretion related to front and side parking setbacks, to the point that a zero lot line building would actually be allowed by right without the need for variances. In this instance, we're west of Park Lane, so none of those standards apply to this particular project. So, but I wanted to at least put that out there. I do think it's, I don't want to go overboard right now, but I think it's the kind of thing where some of it I think is based on history, some of it is based on the character of the development in the two distinct areas. But I do think, regardless of what this board decides tonight, I think this is a situation where it's worth some discussion with administration and the Planning Commission about whether or not we want to put some more flexibility in the ordinance. None of that has a bearing on this board tonight. You have variance requests before you. You have to evaluate them based on the criteria. But I do think that Macomb Street, I think we all, at least in my opinion, you may not agree, could use a little injection of some life into it, right? So a lot of times you get things like this It's an attractive use in terms of it brings people down to Macomb Street. When you have an attractive use, people tend to visit more than one site. And oftentimes you have things like outdoor seating areas, you have buildings closer to lot lines, where the building creates a street presence, not the parking. Parking's in back, building towards front. I think there's some potential there for some future discussions. But again, I don't say any of that in terms of having an impact on tonight's discussion. That's a future separate discussion, but I thought at least the distinction was important to note. And then my closing point is just sort of a summary of all of the other standards related to dimensional variances. I don't foresee any issues on public safety. I don't see safety hazards. I don't believe it will negatively impact land values or the neighborhood character. It will not diminish supply of light and air to surrounding buildings and properties. It's not going to disrupt traffic flow or create nuisance-like conditions. And ultimately, I don't believe that granting the approvals requested would really have any significant negative impact on any of the surrounding or adjacent properties. My opinion. So put that forth for your consideration. Mr. Chair, that's all I have for tonight. Happy to take any questions that the board may have.
I'm going to start.
Fire away.
The coverage area,
Yes.
how many square feet?
You're gonna make me do
Additional.
math?
Oh, I'm asking you to give me your best.
You're the
guess.
engineer.
I know I am. And I didn't bring my scale and, I'm gonna wet myself when I get back.
I'm teasing, Mr. Chair.
But
I'm
there are
sorry.
some areas it looks like you can gain some dirt. I will defer to,
I think, yeah, theoretically, so we delved, this is always tough, right? When you have something that needs planning commission and ZBA, we try to keep the ZBA out of the planning commission and we try to keep the planning commission out of the ZBA, but you can't, right? They're inherent, they're tied together. We did talk about a few different things last night. For instance, the bike racks, which again, the commission really was supportive of providing. These are gravel areas with bike racks. They could be planted. That would reduce, not significantly, but that would reduce the impervious area and bring up the green space or the pervious.
area by the dumpster.
To the rear, yeah. So, well, some of that already is planted. Now, I didn't run the calculations. These were based on the project architect. So I might, when Mr. Bowl comes up, I might defer to him to make sure that he included the green spaces that are sort of on the east and west sides of the existing dumpster to make sure that that was not
Area by the
overcounted.
light pole.
Yeah, so there's an island right here. That is landscaped.
Is?
Yeah. You can, it's not great. I didn't give you the best view, but there is a little island with a tree in it right here.
That, I can't tell whose property that tree is.
That is on the Lloyd's property.
I apologize.
No, that's okay, but that's, again, this is pointing out what little landscape there is currently. And you can see here the little areas on each side of the dumpster
I see.
are also green. So I want to make sure, because we are kind of on 5% isn't really a razor's edge, right? But on an overall site, 5% could be accounted for in a couple of different ways. And I guess I would just want to make sure that Mr. Bull did count all of the green spaces possible, which does two things. One is, if not, then maybe the amount of the variance isn't as much as we think it is, which is a good thing to reduce the extent of the variance, down to the point where if we could get it to be a wash, you could allow the project, if it's at 86% now, and the final result of the project is also 86%, then there's no change, there's no increase, and we could take that off the variance list. So,
And the roof can be made green? It can.
that's possible, though I'm not sure how we would,
Ford Motor Company has done it.
yeah, the way your definition for impervious surface, we did not contemplate green roofs, I can tell you that at this point in time, but any opportunity for additional green space, even to the point of just matching the existing site conditions, whereas it's really, and I'll go to the plan.
That's why I wondered what the number
Yeah.
was. If it
So
wasn't-
this area really is what puts it over. It's because this is new building, and then this is all hard surface with the outdoor unenclosed patio.
And if he obeyed the 10-foot setback in the front?
They are at 6 right now, so it would shrink this by 4. So
No, I meant by the sidewalk.
this way. So they're actually off by 11 there. So they're at 14 for the front. And
You want to make Macomb Street more attractive, and the way we have been doing it is to ensure those berms are placed. In fact, we turned down, is it Hungry Howie's, John, some time ago?
that was for parking though too.
It was park.
But they were going to encroach on the green space.
Yeah. Well, and that was a a parking setback issue, not a building setback issue. But I see. I know what you're saying.
That's enough now.
Yeah, fair enough.
I appreciate it.
Yep. Again, and I think the short answer, without being specific to the numbers that you're looking for, is that a smaller addition would be more compliant, potentially compliant.
I just meant-
But it would really. I mean, it would greatly
It
reduce.
seems like we're close, and if we can take,
It-
everything we can agree upon is good,
Fair enough.
because we want to try to keep things moving here.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Brian. Anybody else from the board? John Slater.
Just one question, Brian. The patio that runs out to the front lot line,
Yep.
is that allow use in the front yard setback?
It is. Setbacks are not required for patios. And we've looked last night, we had this discussion last night as well. It's about a 1 to 2 foot lawn space that will be between the sidewalk and the edge of the patio. So it won't just be concrete on concrete.
That was actually my second question. When I looked out there, I didn't see any stakes in the ground that would indicate dimensions. And how far off the lot line actually is is this end of this patio?
Yeah, there's a bit of an angle, there's an odd angle there at this point in Macomb Street. It's about 1 to 2 feet is my recollection from the discussion last night, from the front lot line.
It would have been very helpful if the applicant would have done what was requested by the township.
John?
Well, I just wanted to ask Brian, I've asked a whole lot of people, this picture was in the package. It doesn't indicate where it came from, who it is, what it is, where it came from.
So that is
Do you have any idea?
That's essentially a photographic example of basically what the addition would look like. That's the intent.
cover,
in terms of colors,
Well,
materials.
that's the covered part of it.
Correct.
Yeah. It doesn't, and then out beyond that is going to be what, concrete and it's gonna be a
At-grade
patio?
patio with a decorative fence enclosure.
Well, who put this in there?
The applicant.
You did?
As part of the submittal.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
They did. There was no identification, and so I happened to be there last night. Asked a lot of people, and nobody knew what it was.
That was part of the submittal package.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on the board?
I have a quick
Yeah,
question,
Mark.
if you don't mind. The front patio part there, that's right off the sidewalk there, you said, is there supposed to be a fence put in there?
Yeah.
Okay, is it like a PVC type fence, plastic fence, or do we need like a metal type fence?
I thought it was.
For the roadway,
wrought iron?
I actually just about traffic on that, but maybe an accident or something, it's gonna catch it from a car maybe coming up, maybe slow down or stop it from coming into the patio, you know?
Sightline
That
for
would be my
exiting.
Concern, I was just curious.
It is. I believe we just confirmed it's a metal decorative picket fence. It's not within a clear vision zone. The driveway is over here, and obviously there's no effect for the Kroger Drive to the west. No. No, it's 12 to 15 feet from the edge of the driveway. So a clear vision triangle at the intersection of a driveway and a sidewalk would be 10 to 15 feet. So there shouldn't be any issues there. And again, it's not obscure. You can see through it. It's picket style.
Mr. Chair,
It's the same, I'm sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. My concern
this is my first meeting. I was in the hospital for the last meeting, but I'm okay. Anyway, at the end of the day, this fence, I'm concerned about the color of it, obviously. You see a lot of those black, almost look like wrought iron fences, and they look a lot richer than white ones or other colors. I would hope it would be black in color, because it does look richer, and it's going to be right out there for all
I
to see.
believe that's the intent, but I'll let the applicant and the
Okay.
project architect
Thank
speak
you.
specifically.
Mhm.
Can I ask him?
I will, when it's my turn. Anyone else on the board? Hearing none, Mr. Shiraki, the floor is yours. Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please introduce yourself and anyone else who happens to be coming to the podium.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Siraki, current residence 17845 Park Lane, Grosse Ile. And this is
And
Rick.
I'm Rick Bowl, 297, excuse me, 25 Bayview, Grosse Ile. I'm the architect.
Thank you. I don't know who's going to present, but please, go ahead.
So I will start. I think that my initial thoughts on this project are very similar to all my other projects. If you're familiar with Tarago, Major Biddles, I'm a firm believer in outdoor seating, especially considering what we just went through with COVID. It really kind of saved my businesses. The outdoor seating, partially outdoor, the enclosed patios with the curtains that roll up and down were very instrumental in creating a venue that was able to survive and not have to close. I believe also that it brings a vibrancy, an appeal to a downtown environment. I think this is kind of the thing that people are looking for a downtown. I think with the bike racks and being right on the front of the restaurant is super important. Parking in the back is the best spot. We've debated patio in the back rather than the front to try to get away from this. But I feel that the project best suited for the front. I think it's appealing. I think that's what people are looking for. And I think it's good for Macomb Street, and I think it's good for Grosse Ile. We've gone through a lot of discussion on how to reduce the setback to 10 feet so we don't have to do this on the side yard and the front. The side yard, there are 2 windows, one on each side of what we've proposed. So
Brian, how do I get to the plan? Do we have the,
Oh, back up,
Go back up.
back. Oh,
those are the elevations. I'm looking for the floor plan.
Oh, I don't have the floor plans.
Okay.
we do.
He's got in there, he could scan it.
You could scan
I
it.
was looking for the architectural first floor plan.
So I might be able to show you on this
Yeah.
top picture here. There is a window currently at Lloyd's on the inside of the building here that runs about where my cursor is. So the edge of this window is currently right here. On the opposite side, we have this window right here. So we basically planted the patio between that. We had to have egress. There was a door here, so that was right next to the window. In order to get this side back setback to 10 feet, we would have to encroach on this window space. And then we would also, if we shifted the patio over, we would also have to encroach on this window space. I am also, that complicates the project. It costs a lot of money to do that. That encroaches on the inside. That changes the entire inside of the building, the windows, or tables to be spaced properly, to have proper aisle widths between the tables so that people can have egress and all those. That was one of the reasons that we picked the width that we did and the depth that we did here. Those things are very important for flow, and it really is important to get the amount of square footage that we need to make the project feasible, to spend the $100,000 or whatever it's going to cost to build a patio, $150,000. So those are several reasons why we decided to put it where it was. Before I bought it, there was a patio that actually went all the way to the outside of this property. It was not a permanent structure. It was simply a wooden pallet system on the ground. And also in this area, there was a tent, a seasonal tent that he put out. And I just personally, is helpful for business and for the appeal of the concept.
I guess the other thing to add is that this is actually, it's a semi-enclosed structure. It's got a roof, it's got walls, but these openings are not windows, actually. They're actually just openings that in inclement weather will have roll-down curtains on them. I'm not sure where to go next exactly, whether to track down the variances we're talking about or to open it for questions. What's the pleasure of the board?
It's your presentation, Mr. Bull.
All right. Well, let's first take a look at the no, I think let's take a look at the variance for the, I think everyone understands the fact that the existing building is non-conforming. It's built on the lot line. It's been there forever. In fact, it's my understanding at one point in time it was actually encroaching on the property next door, and that the Lloyds at some point acquired this little sliver, which is why there's a jog in the property line there. So that's past history. I don't know when that occurred or how it happened or what went on with that, but that apparently that's a given condition.
Oh, you're saying Mr. Smith made an arrangement with someone to sell
From
X
what I
number of
understand, I
feet?
talked to Mr. Smith, the son. The mother is still the owner of the property, and he recalls his father at some time going through the process of selling that little bit of land to Lloyd's. When it occurred, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
The cooler and storage addition, the larger triangle back here is a packaged cooler, and it's actually positioned between the two existing doors, which is about the only spot for it. This is the rear egress door for the restaurant, and then this is the door into the kitchen, which provides the access basically for the staff to this cooler here. So that's about the only spot that it could go. Couldn't be slid to the east at all because of the door, and it is maximized basically by the other doors. So that's, in terms of alternate locations for that, there actually aren't any. The side yard setback in this particular area, which we're asking for a variance of 4 feet, it's 10 feet required, 6 foot on this presentation, and so that's a 4-foot variance. The whole, like Jeremy said, the whole project could have been slid to the east to pick up that 4 feet, but it would have increased the setback between what is basically the entrance to a parking lot rather than another structure. So it was felt that we should really maximize this area here, which is actually the entrance to the restaurant and the primary activity area.
Can you repeat that?
Okay, so there should be a 10-foot side yard setback on the west property line.
Correct.
And we have got a,
6.
yeah, it's 5 foot to the building, so it's 6 feet to the property line. So we're asking for a variance of 4 feet on that side yard.
Okay.
So the whole building the addition could have been slid to the east and maintained that 10-foot variance, or the 10-foot side yard setback. But I'm not sure what the value of that would have been, because that would have met the letter of the ordinance, of course. But I don't know whether you would have gotten any value out of having an additional 4-foot setback from what is in essence a driveway or the parking of the Kroger's parking lot. front yard setback, which should be 25, and we're providing 14, which is active, or 15, I mean, so we're asking for a 10-foot variance. That's based just on the fact of the amount of area that you need for the seating that's inside the covered patio area. And I guess to move on to the fifth variance, which is the impervious area, to clarify a little bit of the numbers, we have got a coverage area that is 19,000 and change. Let's say it's 20,000 as a round number, and 17,500 would meet the 80% requirement. So we're over by a significant amount. However, I did not net out the green area in the back. So that's about 500 square feet, maybe. But it doesn't get us to the 2,500 you would need to net out to get below the 80% requirement.
But does it take you back to where you are now? That's kind of what we're looking for. That way you have a wash.
I don't know. I'd have to do the numbers. It gets closer to being a wash.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That way you're not making the situation any worse.
Correct.
And we might be able to accept that. I don't want to speak for other members of the board, but there's a possibility.
It would take some doing to come up with that accurate calculation, but it would get closer to where we were before.
I trust in your ability to do that.
Could I just jump in, Mr. Chair, real
Yeah,
quick? I just,
right.
real rough, okay, not exact.
Go ahead.
Squaring off the areas east and west of the waste receptacle does get about 750 square feet of pervious surface. The 5%, by my calculation, 5% that they are deemed over at this point, based on the lot size, that's a little under 1,100 square feet. So that 750, I don't want to say it mitigates the 1,100
Takes
because
us
it
70%
doesn't,
of the way there.
but it's much closer than maybe where we think we are.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay.
So that-
Okay, good. And this little truncated triangle near the rear of your,
This area right here,
yeah, what is that?
that's a landscape bed. Currently, it's not planted, but the intent is
Okay,
to.
so that's, we'll call that green space for lack of a better term.
It is, and that is not included in the impervious surface calculation. That's been netted out.
Thank you. And the, what did we call this egress, the green? On the Canadian side of the building,
That would be the east.
yes, I know. I've made that mistake too often, sir.
So this is the Canadian side and this
Yes,
is the US
so this
side.
is
Okay.
all green?
Yes, the green is all landscape bushes.
And this is your bike path area
Correct.
that Brian wanted, I think, last night. Not you, Brian, the other Brian.
Planning Commission was supportive of the bike racks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Brian.
Actually, that's always been in the proposal. That's,
Pollock? Thank you.
yeah.
That is something that I found very important to the project. I think that being a resident of Grosse Ile with children, I have 3 children in the
Not-
school system.
I'm not suggesting removing the bike path, bike racks, but we have bike racks at play areas, at schools that are mulched.
We can absolutely change those to mulch.
That will gain X number of square feet.
That
That would put us over.
that would probably make everything a wash, Mr. Chair.
Just a suggestion?
I think they'd actually be, I mean, it's roughly the northerly, if you're just looking at north between the sidewalk and sidewalk, if that makes sense. They have a cut-in sidewalk, private sidewalk parallel to the public sidewalk, where 2 bike racks are depicted. That's over 50 feet. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong side.
I'll
That is over 20 feet in depth by Almost 15 in width.
I trust you gentlemen to check my observations, and if that works, it's one less item to discuss, in my opinion.
Getting closer to where the existing conditions are with that, yeah.
I apologize for interrupting. Mr. Bittinger would not let me do that, I'm sure.
No, I appreciate that. That was very good.
Yeah. I guess those are that's the extent of my presentation, so if any of the board members have got questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bull, Mr. Shiraki. Do we want to let the audience chime in here before we come to the board?
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, John. You're
I
the
hate to
senior
be,
member.
persistent about this, but Jeremy, you mentioned Major Biddle.
Yes, sir.
2 of the 6 people I asked yesterday at the restaurant said this was Major Biddle.
That is Major Biddle's patio, correct. That is they only have an indoor-outdoor
No,
patio.
Okay.
And we actually just got approved at Major
It was just driving me
Biddle's.
nuts what it was.
Yeah, we just actually got approved for Major Biddle's for a 500 square foot outdoor patio attached to the indoor patio.
So this is in fact, it's not identified in their package.
Yeah,
It's
that's
Major
exactly
Biddle.
what that is. That is Major
Okay,
Biddle's.
2 out of 6 people at your restaurant knew that.
Yep.
And I actually think Chris knew it too, but didn't want to tell me.
The intent of including that photograph, one of the questions that was addressed to me before we made the presentation was, what are the colors?
Yeah.
What are the materials?
Yeah.
And the intent is to duplicate what was done at Major Biddle's.
Got it.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you,
nice.
John.
Very nice.
All right, gentlemen, if anyone from the audience would like to make a comment, please come to the microphone, identify yourself, give your name and address, and you're welcome to come forward. Ma'am?
Well, I didn't plan on this, but I am Marie
Yes.
Pukak, 25843 West River Road.
Get that, Lauren? Thank you.
My husband and I own Grosse Ile Pet and Garden Center. His name is Rick, and we are just in total support and wish these guys can just move forward and get her done. They've put a lot of money into what they've done so far. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears happening over there, and they're doing a really good job. So we're their neighbors, and we're in total support.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thanks. Anyone else? Sir? Hearing none? Oh, we do have one. All right.
I'm Andrea Lakowitz, 20710 East River Road. I am a customer, and I'm in total support of this as well. My husband and I, make our way around the island every weekend, going to every establishment that's open to eat and drink. We hop around, so we stay on the island, keep our business on the island, and I'm in total support of whatever they're doing. It'll be beautiful. Their other restaurants are beautiful, so I support them as well.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Hearing none, we will bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chairman, as far as making a motion, I'm not sure where we ended up.
Well,
The 5 things, some of which are
we haven't,
mitigated.
I don't think we're there yet, John. Why don't we see what the board has to say here?
Well, okay, I know, I'm not making a motion.
Oh, okay, all
I
right.
want to know where we ended up. 5 of them are partially mitigated, or one of them is, and I don't know where we're at. There was 5
We have
variances requested.
5 variances requested.
Yeah.
Per Brian. We have resolution on none, but possibly number 5 can be mitigated somewhat.
And they have,
Or eliminated.
and they have accepted that. That was a good one, and you get accolades for that one.
Coming from you, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so we're still discussing the first 4 then, unless other board members want to discuss the 5th one.
Just to chime in, I don't think the applicants have eliminated the request for the 5th variance. I think they implied they would look into whether it could be reduced or totally eliminated. Am I correct? We were talking about moving the
The impervious
right,
surfaces.
impervious. The bike, can the bike racks be put on non-pervious materials, or is the area in the back possibly larger than what we've estimated? So you would not need the fifth variance, is what I'm getting at. It would require you come back, if I'm correct, that if
I'm just saying, we have a tentative agreement. Nothing is, it would be a condition on whatever motion, I believe, if we could do that.
So what
I
would-
will defer to you and Brian for,
I mean, when we get to that point, it's up to the board. I don't know. I mean, if you don't grant them a impervious surface increase variance, then they have to provide a revised plan that demonstrates compliance.
Right.
That wouldn't necessarily need to come back to this board, though. If they comply, they comply. So I think it's in their best interest, as I'm hearing the conversation go, probably in their best interest to
Stay with the
green
variance.
up those couple of spaces, really sharpen your pencil on those calcs and make it work. That's what I'm hearing, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
well, it may be moot anyways, so let's see what else happens.
So we're correct, you have not given up the fifth, but you may consider what Brian indicated, getting the impervious percentage within what you currently have, or at what you have.
Correct, I think we've mitigated it some, I don't know that we know the exact numbers. We haven't we can net out some area that I mistakenly included in the impervious area, which would reduce the percentage some.
And increase it on the other side, right? It would reduce the amount of impervious surface and increase the amount of pervious surface.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, it's the ratio we're looking at, so.
Okay.
And then we have agreed to make the bike rack area an impervious material of some sort.
I think mulch is perfect.
Well, I mean, I've seen that before.
Oh, yeah, rubber mulch or
Yeah,
whatever.
rubber works, whatever. Yeah.
All right.
No, but you're correct. I appreciate that. Okay, Mr. Swigert, would you like to start?
Well, I've listened to all the arguments, and it seems to me like the factors that went into the design were based upon necessity. So I do see a practical hardship for the side yard and the lot line issues. So I'm okay with this. I think with the conditions that we require mulch around the bicycle area, parking area. I think that that coupled with revised calculations, I think would be fine. No more comments.
All right, let's go to the far end. We'll skip around here.
I echo Mr. Schweigert's what he just said. I think it's a great thing if we can do this, obviously with some of the factors that were dealt with, but it'd be so nice to have that as lay next door has got up here and the other already got up here. I mean, it's really, really, really needed on Macomb Street. So if there's any way we can make all this work, I would really like to see that happen. Thank you.
Mark, please, any comments?
No, I'm completely on board with it. It sounds like number 5 is already pretty much mitigated right here. It sounds like we took care of that.
Cool.
And then 1 through 4, I'm actually in favor of, particularly what they're doing with Macomb Street and increasing values. There's no problems with either neighbor, so that was one of my concerns, and I was also concerned about the traffic and the fencing, but it sounds like everything's been thought through, so I'm good with it as is.
John?
I agree with everything everybody said, and I
Attorney.
think this is nothing but an improvement for the township, and I have heard nothing negative that would need me to vote against any of it.
Thank you. I think, so I went to a DDA consultant meeting, I don't know, last year or the year before, and one of the big problems with Macomb Street as a downtown is that it's a mile long and our anchor's a grocery store. So that's not exactly conducive of people walking downtown and things like that. I think it's a huge improvement. I'm not worried about the parking lot side, encroaching on a parking lot. I don't think that's going to bother anybody. I think changes to it would be unnecessarily burdensome.
Yeah.
So I fully support this, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Charles, my friend.
I too think that the applicants have shown that strict compliance would be unnecessarily burdensome for continued use of the property. If you move it half mile east, you wouldn't have this problem or many of these problems. So I think that's important, as well as we've discussed the bike rack. And I think that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances just by the, it's not bizarre, but the unique location of this property being so close to its lot lines and everything. You didn't create that, you bought it like that, but you didn't create it. So I think that is an extraordinary circumstances. You didn't create it when you purchased it, and you're not, in my analysis, making it any worse in extraordinary circumstances. In fact, you indicated that the parking lot side for Kroger would actually not be of any detriment because they'd get a smaller green belt to look at, which would be nicer there. So I think you met the requirements that we have to look at, some of them, for granting it.
Okay, I have a few comments. Mr. Bull, I assume you prepared these drawings?
I did, sir.
On sheet 1, which site plan 1, when I travel and make my inspection, I notice an electrical box of some kind in the front near the sidewalk, which I do not see identified.
You are correct, it is not on here.
What is happening with that box?
I can answer that, I believe.
Please.
That, I believe, is the electrical meter for your street parking on Macomb Street.
So it will remain there.
It will remain there.
And to service that, you will need so much free space around it?
It is, the fence that we propose would not encroach on that. Our fence is beyond that.
No, I know, I'm not saying your fence goes through it. If a workman comes there to use that, to do whatever it is, consumers of Detroit Edison, whatever they are now, requires him to do, will he have access?
Yes,
Yes? Edison has told you that?
that is not true.
So the answer would be you don't know.
Fair enough.
Mr. Bull, your experience with Edison, former
don't-
employee?
I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you.
If I could continue, though, I'm hoping that that's in the right-of-way rather than on private property, although we don't know that.
It's at the back of the sidewalk. On the south.
South edge of the meter is on the edge of the sidewalk.
Yes, sir.
Now, there's typically a foot between the sidewalk and the property line. Good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you. On your next drawing, A1, on the Trenton or west side of this drawing, above the words uncovered patio, you show very faintly, but it is visible, a door.
May I address that?
Yes.
The fire marshal asked us to put a second gate
I apologize.
in the uncovered patio area because the occupancy levels of the covered patio and the uncovered patio were greater than 50 occupants. And we agreed to do that. So there were two alternate locations. We have decided on the location that is on the Macomb Street side. So you may delete that from your drawing on the Trenton side of the gate there. That gate that's on the Trenton side of the fence.
Thank you. Staying on A1. In the lower right-hand corner, you have a partial box that it is identified as concrete WAL. Please explain.
So on my drawing, have written a K there.
A K.
That would spell walk, W-A-L-K.
This, excuse me, let my companion here, right here.
It does not
You see
appear
the
on your
K?
drawing.
No, he wrote it on his.
I think your printer ran out of ink for the
It's
chairperson.
on
Okay, well, here's the real explanation for anybody who wants to know, and I'll give you way more information than you want to. When you draft these things on design layers, and then you put them on the sheet layers, and the sheet layers are cropped. And the crop didn't make it all the way to the right of the walk. It made it to the wall.
So is that the new walk per the fire marshal? Is that what you're telling me?
It is.
I can accept that. Thank you for that clarification. Which, and the same lack of specificity appears on E1, and I assume the answer is the same. Doesn't say anything, it's just faintly drawn in there.
Oh, from the, yes, the alternate gate
Yeah,
location.
yeah. All right, that, it doesn't take much to confuse me, I apologize. Okay. With regard to the submittal, Mr. Shiraki, I assume this is your handwriting, not Mr. Bowles?
Correct.
Thank you. Item 4, as per your sheet, quote, did not know about restrictions, quote. When did you find out about the restrictions?
When I put in my application for the patio. And I was informed about the restrictions, and then that's when I hired Rick.
I'm sure Mr. Bowl was aware of the restrictions. And it's my understanding you did not apply for a building permit for your mechanical freezer unit, whatever, in the back?
That is correct.
And if you had applied at that time, you might have known what these restrictions were?
That is correct.
And you would have saved yourself possibly some time and possibly some expense?
Yes, sir.
With regard to the setbacks, you have made a case for a variance, several variances. And you say you have unusual circumstances, which, quite honestly, I believe you do. But the crux is, what happens to other development on Macomb Street? These people, if they're held to a strict interpretation of the setbacks, and you are not, we are enabling you to gain a potential economic advantage over them, which to me does not seem fair. But that's why we're here. That's all I have, unless the board has other comments. Hearing none. I suggest a motion may be in order.
I gotta find the terms, Mr. Chairman.
That's,
I motion that we approve all 5 variances based on the practical difficulties, that it grants substantial justice, does not negatively impact public safety or welfare, and that the structure is already under extraordinary circumstances.
Support.
Did I miss any?
yeah, you probably need to reference the number 5.
And does not interfere with the preservation of property rights.
Well,
The
yeah,
mulching of ground.
we need to,
Oh, I see what you mean. On the condition,
Like
condition that that you act in good faith to mitigate as much of the impervious property as possible. You accept that, Mr. Chairman?
Brian,
I do, I support it very well.
do we need to reference the ordinance by name and number in the motion?
In terms of review criteria or in terms of the standard for impervious surface? Both?
Both.
So 23.5B are the review criteria, which given a favorable motion, you would be acknowledging that those standards are met, essentially. And then with respect to your condition, that would be related to 7.4.
Jameson, you're okay with that? Mr. Yeager?
I am.
Any other comments from the board?
I just want to
Go ahead, Chuck.
his qualification that substantially mitigate. That's, in my terminology, that could be 1%, that could be 100%, so you don't even need it. So I don't want to put a percentage on it, but I think we should say that you've agreed to make the bike rack area out of impervious material, which would
Impervious.
substantially bringing it into a lesser impervious requirement.
If I can, pervious material,
Pervious.
not impervious.
Right, what we want to say is that you've agreed to put the bike rack area in pervious material.
Correct.
Which would either eliminate the need for the variance for number 5 or bring it more in substantial compliance. I think that's what it should say.
Yeah, I think you could, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I may. So I think the rationale for the condition is twofold. It's what Chuck just said. So it would be to mulch the bike rack areas, so that will automatically reduce the number. And I think the second part of it, we kind of discussed a little bit as part of the meeting conversation, is that you would update your calculations to make sure that you're accounting for all of your pervious surface, especially at the rear of the lot, which may have been overcounted.
While we're there, if I recall, last night's meeting, someone eliminated 2 parking spaces and then was asked to put them back. Is this calculation going to be impacted by that? I just want to make sure. I don't want to cause a problem with the planning commission.
No, there again, because it's a gravel lot, it's really just the space, and there's already gravel there. So I think the calcs just need to be updated to include the grass area at the rear.
That's fine. We don't want to, we have enough issues. We don't need one with the planning commission, in my opinion.
So I accept the gentleman's friendly amendment to require that the bike area be mulched.
Lori, you got that?
I got that.
Okay. All set. All right, the chair calls for a vote on the motion. We don't need a, no, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passed. I do want to commend you for your efforts so far, Mr. Shiraki. I appreciate it. And Mr. Bowl, thank you for a wonderful presentation, as usual.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you, Brian.
Before we go any farther, you're done. Any comments from the public on, why is that on here? Why do we have public comment on it?
Just let them comment. See if they have any.
Okay, if anybody, Mr. Heil, do you have anything to say? Can you stick around, please?
Who's an aye?
Okay, so there's no public comment, there's no miscellaneous comments. We've deferred the selection of officers until we hear from the Township Board. And with that said, I would accept a motion to adjourn. Oh, yeah, we have to accept the minutes. I'm sorry, back up. Time out. Thank you. I shouldn't say that, right? Shouldn't say that. How unprofessional. Okay. Has everybody read the meeting minutes that were prepared and submitted?
Yeah.
May 25th. 25th? Okay, do we have any comments on those meeting minutes?
Very well done.
Hearing none, I would like to hear a motion to accept those as written.
Motion to accept the May 23rd minutes as written. 25th.
25th,
I'm sorry, 25th minutes as written.
close enough.
Pretty good.
Second.
Pretty good.
John,
Oh, support. Which John?
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Okay, now with that done, I hope I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. The meeting is hereby adjourned at
Okay.
7:18.
7, 8.
Thank you all. I apologize.